video, I want to share with you a life update to talk about the elephant in the room, which is, where have I been in the last 6 months? I haven't been uploading because I had to evict my ex-boyfriend, who is also my tenant, who stopped paying rent. Then, I got an order of protection because he ramped up the harassment and the threats after the police removed him from my home. Then, it gets better, he sued me, stating he owns 50% of the home that I paid for, and he had nothing to do with buying, by filing a document that he falsified in civil court, which is the definition of fraud. Yes, we have a lot to catch up on and unpack, so there'll be at least 3 videos on this topic. I'm not posting this video for sympathy. This is a very difficult video for me to film, but I decided to share the story because there's people out there who might be going through something similar or is about to evict someone, and I want you to know you are not alone. It's important for me to say the decisions I made each step of the way are my decisions, and in no way any kind of legal advice. So I want to refer to this as my story time. These are my life experiences through my eyes. I'm not telling you to do exactly what I did. What I did made sense for me, and what I believed was the best decision, knowing that my ex-boyfriend, who in my opinion is a covert narcissist, and yes, I was a victim of narcissistic abuse for 3 years. It, of course, wasn't like that at the beginning. I mean, no one would stick around if that was happening at the very beginning. The narcissistic abuse happens gradually, and yes, at the end, it got very scary. It all started 5 years ago. I met him on a dating app, and of course, everything sounded wonderful at the beginning. I mean, no one knowingly signs up for this. I didn't think I will need an eviction lawyer, 15 police officers, including a sergeant, then a restraining order judge, then talk to numerous civil lawyers about the ownership of my home. This guy was the absolute worst. Men who try to take money from women that is not rightfully theirs is scum of the earth. But of course, they don't look like that at the beginning, now do they? Of course not. So, I take responsibility for my mistakes I made in this situation. I overlooked red flags that, of course, my friend saw. And it's much easier to see red flags when you're not in the relationship. Especially when I want this relationship to work for whatever reason. I had to really look back and admit that I make bad mistakes when I'm in a place of fear. So, the question is, what were my fears back then? I just bought a detached home out of state because home prices in California are ridiculous. If I did buy a home in California, then I would have to give up most vacations and my luxury handbag addiction, and we all know Coco, my inner Chanel addict, isn't going anywhere. So while on a business trip out of state, I decided to browse homes, and the price was right. My dream was to buy a fixer-upper and remodel it to exactly what I want. I mean, what is more luxurious than a house customized to my exact liking? My fear was that tackling a remodel all by myself in a state that I never lived in. So when I met Mr. Evil, yes, let's call him Mr. Evil. He was cute, he was physically strong, and he fixed his home as a hobby. We went on our first date and we got along great. I found a home and it was in rough shape, but it had a great layout, and the most important thing of all, of course, is location, location, location. For me, it was the perfect location. I wanted a tenant for that home. I wouldn't be living there as I work in California, and I have my condo in California. He can live for a reduced rent in exchange for remodeling. You know, you scratch my back, I scratch your back situation. We can both fix the home over 3-day weekends. It sounded like the perfect arrangement, and it was, for like the first 13 months. Why? Because, if you don't know, narcissists cannot pretend all the time they're someone they are not. So the mask he is wearing started to slowly slip. Now, fast forward like 4 years. The remodeling is still not done. Because, as time went on, he worked on the house less and less. Then, he stopped working on it altogether, but of course, he still wants all the perks. Textbook narcissist, feeling entitled. Then, he just stopped paying rent. So, we broke up. And he didn't want to move out. So, as a last-ditch effort, we signed a notarized agreement. Because at this point, I don't trust him. So, I made sure it was notarized. And this agreement lists out all the items we both agreed to that he needs to complete in 5 months. And he selected the move-out date. To no one's surprise, he didn't complete the work. For the 100th time. And, of course, he didn't move out. Should anybody be surprised? I guess not. I tried to evict him without an attorney by filing the paperwork, but it turned out to be more complicated. In court, the judge advised that I get an attorney. First, I did go through an attorney referral service, and they charged me like $50 for them to find me an attorney that's right for my case. And included in the $50 was first 30 minutes of a consultation. But I quickly realized just because I was paying a referral service didn't mean I was getting quality attorneys. So scrap that, and instead I called everybody on Yelp, not a sponsored video. I called everybody on Yelp who was willing to do a free consultation. The amount of money that they wanted was all over the place. Some wanted $6,000, $4,000. I mean, it was nuts. And that was just a retainer. So the retainer is the money, a deposit that I would have to pay. And once you give them $6,000 or $4,000, in my opinion, all of a sudden you get an itemized list of things that you don't know what the charges are. So once you give them $6,000, just think that you're not getting any of that back. And that's a minimum. If they go over, they're going to keep billing you. So I didn't want them to just keep billing me. The thing is, I have a notarized agreement that states the move-out date. This should not be a hard case. And I called everyone, and after each call, I would ask, do you know who does flat fee pricing? But most of them laughed at me. But one place told me, hey, call this firm. They specialize in eviction, and they do it on a flat fee. Holy cow, music to my ears. I called them right away, and yes, their prices were exactly what I was looking for. And can you guess? $1,000 flat rate. It took me 6 weeks to find them, but it was worth it. If you're in this situation, don't give up. Keep calling and find someone who specializes in the field of law that you need, and look for a flat fee. I mean, I called every day, and if they didn't call me back, in 1 or 2 days, I called them back until I got someone on the line, and that is the amount of work that it took to find my current lawyers. On the first consultation call with my attorneys who does the flat fee, he said this is an easy case because the notarized agreement has a move-out date. If there wasn't a move-out date, then in my situation, I would have to give him another 30 days notice to move out. My lawyer filed the paperwork with the court, and they hired a company that will hand-deliver the eviction lawsuit to Mr. Evil, which is called process serving. And, as expected, when Mr. Evil received the lawsuit papers, I got all kinds of threatening emails, which I didn't respond to and just ignored. I changed my phone number so he can no longer send me these awful, nonsensical, provocative threats. He has pushed my buttons in the past, so yeah, I knew this was coming. The important thing here is to not react. I know it's hard, but if I react, he wins. That is what a narcissistic abuser wants. He wants me to engage in his nonsense because that confirms he got under my skin. So I didn't respond to any emails, unless by law I had to. And I talked to my lawyer about what I was required by law to respond or not. Remember, I cannot change the way a narcissist reacts, but what I can change was my phone number. You may want to try that. I thought about changing my email, but I didn't, because I decided to collect his email threats, just in case I needed that. And yes, later, that came in very handy. The thing about email is I don't have to look at that every day. I found getting harassing text too destructive for my day-to-day. Again, this is what I did. You do what you think is best for your situation. And yeah, my lawyer told me not to accept any rent payment, even if Mr. Evil tried to pay, because if I accept it, then we have to start all over again and file different paperwork. The court date was now set for next week. Let's talk about the court hearing. On the day of the hearing, the judge asked Mr. Evil why he didn't move out on the agreed moved out date. And guess what he said? Mr. Evil said he shouldn't need to move out because he owns 50% of this home. The judge said, "Do you have any paperwork to prove you have 50% ownership?" Because he's not on the deed and he's not on title, because I own the house. Mr. Evil said he doesn't have that paperwork right now, but he does. So the judge gave him 3 business days to submit that to the court, and the next court date was scheduled the following week. Court date number 2. Next court date rolled around, and the judge asks Mr. Evil, "Did you submit the proof of 50% ownership paperwork?" And Mr. Evil said, "Yes, I did." The judge looks puzzled and asks, "You did?" Then he asks his assistant, "Did you get it?" And she said, "No." The judge asked Mr. Evil again, "You said you submitted the paperwork?" And Mr. Evil said, "Yeah. But that paperwork isn't important." Mr. Evil talked to his lawyer, and his lawyer said, "Blah, blah, 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 blah." I'm saying blah, blah, blah because it was gibberish. The judge interrupted Mr. Evil and said, "You have a lawyer?" Mr. Evil said, "Yes, I do." And the judge asked, "Why isn't he here?" So Mr. Evil conveniently ignored that question and said, "I talked to my lawyer, and my lawyer confirmed I definitely own 50% of that house." The judge said, "Mr. Evil, if you had a lawyer, the lawyer should have filled out a paperwork telling the court that he is your lawyer." And the judge said, "Do you understand what I said?" Mr. Evil says, "Yes, I understand what you said, and I have a lawyer, and he confirmed that I own 50% of the home." The judge interrupted him and said, "Mr. Evil, you don't have a lawyer because he's not here. And you didn't present proof that you own 50% of the house. So this eviction is granted." Mr. Evil interrupts the judge and says, "This isn't right. I will tell my lawyer that this isn't fair. I want this case transferred to Superior Court." The judge looked pretty annoyed and he said, "This case is closed." So I won the eviction, and oh my god, I was dying laughing inside. This is the real Mr. Evil, the side he hides that most people don't get to see. He hides it with his charm, which no longer has any power over me. If you haven't experienced a narcissist, they can be very charismatic, charming, and believes their opinion should be taken on board and everyone else ignored, even the judges. His response is hard to understand for people who haven't experienced this type of personality disorder, because his lie that he has paperwork to prove 50% of ownership was easily proven. It doesn't exist, and that is why he couldn't produce it. But he will continue to say to the judge, he submitted the paperwork. When the judge says, "No, you didn't submit the paperwork," which is a fact, then Mr. Evil will say the paperwork is not important anymore. As if Mr. Evil gets to decide what is important or not. Remember, only Mr. Evil's opinion matters. Facts are completely irrelevant because facts are inconvenient for him right now. Then Mr. Evil has the audacity to say that his lawyer, who doesn't exist, that's a fact, said he, Mr. Evil, for sure owns 50% of the house. Yeah, that sounds batshit crazy. But this is very textbook response for people like Mr. Evil. So let's continue. The judge says, Mr. Evil, you have 5 days to move out of the home. If not, a writ of restitution can be made against you, and you will be forcibly removed from the home. Okay, it's my first win. Oh, I feel a little bit of relief. I had to wait 5 days, and of course, I do not expect him to move out on his own, because that is something a rational, logical person would do, right? A move a narcissist is not capable of doing. So 5 days goes by, and to no one's surprise, he didn't move out. I called my eviction lawyer and told him, let's do the next step. He filled out the writ of restitution and submitted that to the court. This basically says the tenant did not move out in the 5 days, and when the judge signs it, it means law enforcement can go remove the tenant off the property, with force if necessary. That took another 2 days to get signed off by the same eviction judge. That paperwork now goes to the sheriff or the constable. I don't personally know the difference between the two. I called them and they need a few days to get back to me. I chose Friday at 10 a.m. as what we call the lockout date, aka remove the tenant date. And we can only do this with the locksmith, the constable, and myself on site. So from the first court date to the lockout date took 12 days. At 10 a.m., the constable, the locksmith, and I was on site. I had my 3 dogs in my car, and it was parked a few houses down. Then the constable walked over, rang the doorbell. Mr. Evil wouldn't leave. He talked about why this is all unfair and that he is the true victim. This is textbook behavior for a narcissist, to play victim when they are the actual perpetrators. It's like watching a psychological thriller where the town sheriff that everybody knows and loves gets revealed that he is actually the serial killer that's been unliving people. Yeah, it's kind of like that. The constable came over and said to me, if we have to, they will knock down my front door and I will need to replace that. I said, I'm totally okay with that. I need him gone. 1 hour goes by, no luck. The constable called every police officer who is free in the area to come to my home. I see a cop pull up every 10 minutes. There are 9 police officers by the second hour, and it's now noon. My neighbors are coming out of their houses wondering what's going on. It was a spectacle. The locksmith is wondering if he can unlock the garage side door. This is taking forever. It is almost hour 3, and Mr. Evil opens the door. The police rushed in, and they were looking for his guns. The locksmith started changing all the locks, and Mr. Evil is on the sidewalk, and I go inside the house. The house is a mess. It's easily an episode of Hoarders. Dirty, trash, his personal belongings scattered everywhere within the trash, dog feces inside the house. This was on a Friday, and of course, the harassment got cranked up like 1,000 degrees on Saturday. I will cover the harassment and how I got through that in the next video. But before I end this video, I had to think, what lessons am I supposed to learn from this? Just feeling shame or beating myself for making this mistake is not a good use of my time. So instead, I wanted to figure out what is something positive I can get from this horrible experience. I learned that my girlfriends, all 4 of them, saw red flags so much easier than I did. And I noticed that I am able to see red flags about their boyfriends/husbands more easily than them. As humans, we choose to ignore red flags because we want that boyfriend/relationship to work for whatever reason. I need to be more aware of who I bring into my personal life/space, because a wrong person can suck my energy, suck my time, and suck my money away, which are all very precious to me. My good friend in real life and also on YouTube is Kathy McCondo. Go check out our luxury channel. And she says, all I have to do is vet out men like how I vet out Chanel bags. If there's a deal breaker, no emotional attachment. Just say no and ship it back. And yes, I'm better at selecting Chanel bags than men at this time. Oh, that hurts. It burns, but it's the truth. Number 2, again, I make bad decisions when I'm faced with fear. Remember, I found buying a home out of California scary. And moreover, renovating an entire house is scary for anyone. And finding a tenant for the first time in a home out of state is also scary. So, when I met Mr. Evil, who has renovated homes before, said he enjoyed that and was interested in reduced rent in exchange for remodeling, I ignored all the red flags and wanted to believe he is the person who could make my fears go away. A narcissist mirrors your values, beliefs, hobbies, and desires. The lesson here is don't depend on strangers just because he or she says they can do X, Y, and Z, because not enough time has passed by to see if they can keep their word or that they're even a good, reliable person. With more time, like in this case 14 months, I would have seen he was a faker, a liar, a user. Number 3, I went through the eviction process and now I know what to do if I have to evict another tenant. It wasn't as hard as I thought. So it may feel hard when you're going through the process, but I promise you, you will make it through. So, what's the conclusion? So saying all this out loud is hard, but those were the mistakes I made, and what I hope to learn in this situation. I am human. I make mistakes like everyone else. I hope to not make the exact same mistake in the future. I hope this helps somebody out there, because I never thought this would happen to me. Next week, I will post part 2. If you have any stories to share like this, leave me a comment, and I'll see you soon.